Yo, what's going on, YouTube, and welcome back to Goal Line Hockey. It's your boy, Kevin Forte. Guys, we're taking a look today at the Seattle Kraken expansion mock draft here for 2021. This is my final mock draft before we find out the actual roster that the Seattle Kraken will have here for the 2021 NHL season. We'll be taking a look at that in this video. If you guys like what we're doing here at Goal Line Hockey, want to see the latest news around the NHL and more videos just like this one, make sure to give this video a big thumbs up and an even bigger subscribe down below. So let's take a look at the roster that I made here with the Seattle Kraken. So there's a couple factors you have to remember here, and the first one being you have to look at this in terms of this roster is actually pretty stacked. But you also have to remember some of these guys aren't signed, and some of these guys also are going to be, either brought in and, they're going to get drafted, and then they're going to get traded right after. So you could pretty much say that this team is going to be not necessarily, even with this roster, not the team you're going to see on the ice in the fall. So let's start off with the cap hit. The cap hit was at $63 million for this team, which is, with the salary cap ceiling being at 81.5, we stayed $18 million below the salary cap ceiling. So we have almost $19 million in cap space with this team. So we're looking at the forwards first. We've got James Van Riemsdyk, Yanni Gourde, and Vladimir Tarasenko. This is a pretty solid top line. Obviously, Yanni Gourde just winning a Stanley Cup with the Tampa Bay Lightning. James Van Riemsdyk has 2 years left on his contract. And you've also got Tarasenko, who has 2 years left on his deal. Tarasenko could be a guy, if he likes it in Seattle, he'll stay in Seattle, but maybe he doesn't want to play in Seattle. Maybe he gets moved from the Seattle Kraken as soon as they draft him. But it would be a no-brainer here for the Seattle Kraken to get him for nothing. They could get value for him somewhere in terms of the open trade market. Now looking at the second line gets a little bit interesting. These guys are pretty interchangeable. You have Jonathan Drouin, Max Domi, and Josh Bailey. So this is a pretty expensive second line. Drouin and Domi are each making $5.5 million, and Josh Bailey is making $5 million. So you're talking about over $15 million in this second line. It's a pretty solid second line. Hopefully you get some kind of spark from Jonathan Drouin. Because of the way he plays and the lack of scoring in this expansion draft that is available, it's a no-brainer. You have to take Drouin. Even at the little bit higher cap hit, if he's able to get any bit of that scoring touch back in Seattle in the top six, this may be a perfect opportunity for him. And you talk about, things were difficult for Drouin in Montreal. It was a lot of pressure. Being a French-Canadian kid, he had a lot of pressure going into Montreal, and he obviously had high expectations of himself and from the fan base, and maybe going to Seattle just gives him an opportunity to kind of take that anvil off his back and to kind of get his game back. Max Domi obviously has struggled in Columbus. He hasn't really worked well under the Tortorella system, and we're probably going to see somewhat of a similar system under their new coaching staff. So it makes sense for him to go to Seattle, get an opportunity, and he's the most valuable player that Columbus left unprotected. It makes sense. And then Josh Bailey of the Islanders, this actually helps the Islanders too. It moves out $5 million in cap space, and this is a guy that can play center. Josh Bailey has played center in the past, which is why I chose him over Jordan Eberle. Jordan Eberle is making 5.5, and Bailey's making only 5. Plus, Bailey can play center. He's a right wing. He can play center, so he has that added value at the lower cap hit, and because he can play center. That is something that is very, very valuable in a guy like Josh Bailey. Now we move into the bottom six. You got Nick Ritchie, Andreas Athanasiou, and Jonas Donskoy. Ritchie and Athanasiou do have to be re-signed. They are both restricted free agents, though, so it seems like they could be coming back to the Seattle Kraken. And Athanasiou, he didn't have a great year in LA, but we know the year prior when he was with the Edmonton Oilers, he did put up pretty good numbers at the end of that season. So the potential is there in Athanasiou, and considering there's not a lot of other guys that are really valuable in LA that I would protect, even if I lost Athanasiou for nothing, I would still rather have the chance at Athanasiou with the way the LA Kings roster was laid out. And Jonas Donskoy has 2 years left on his deal. His cap hit's a little bit high at 3.9. But this is a guy, if you move on from Van Riemsdyk, Tarasenko, Drouin, Domi, or Bailey, you can slot Jonas Donskoy into the top 6 and really not have that big of a loss. And I think that's something we could see the Seattle Kraken do here with a guy like Jonas Donskoy. But for right now, he fits good on the third line. And then the fourth line, you've got Christian Fischer, Mason Appleton, and Colin Blackwell, who all had pretty decent seasons for their team. I really like Christian Fischer from the Arizona Coyotes. I was really expecting them to trade him before the expansion draft, but it didn't end up working out. Mason Appleton, I think with more playing time, could be a really nice piece here for the Seattle Kraken. And, in Winnipeg, there were just too many good centers. He really was farther down the depth chart. Here in Seattle, he will get an opportunity to play center in the top 4. And then Colin Blackwell had a pretty nice season with the New York Rangers, but again, do you go with Barclay Goodrow or Colin Blackwell? I guess it doesn't really matter that much. But in terms of contracts for next season, I went with Colin Blackwell to meet that requirement. And then you look at the scratched or the extra guys. Again, these guys will jump into the lineup if/when they trade some of these guys in that group of forwards that I have on the starting roster. You have guys like Chris Tierney, Kalle Jarnkrok, Pierre Engvall, Nathan Bastian, and Cole Lind. All those guys, guys like Bastian and Lind are a lot younger, so they're not necessarily the best guys to add, but again, lower salary cap hit, and they also are young, so they do have potential, and they'll probably start off in the AHL, or they could jump into the NHL in the bottom 6 and kind of work their way up. And now looking at defensemen, it's a little bit interesting. You have Mark Giordano and Tyson Barrie as the top pairing. Now, Tyson Barrie does have to be re-signed. That is something to keep in mind. And we've also heard a lot about Mark Giordano potentially being drafted and then traded as soon as he comes to Seattle. So that could also be something that we look at as well. Jake Bean and Nikita Zadorov on the second pair. Jake Bean, the puck-moving defenseman, the guy that's going to move the play forward. And Big Z, Nikita Zadorov, will be kind of the shutdown defenseman alongside Jake Bean. Good compliments to each other on that second pair. Now we go to the third pair. Jamie Oleksiak and Troy Stecher each had pretty nice seasons in their own right in that Central Division. Jamie Oleksiak going back to Dallas, he adds a little bit of grit and a little bit of that size that the Seattle Kraken team could use, especially if they trade out a guy like Giordano. Oleksiak could definitely add that little bit of edge and a good penalty killer overall. Troy Stecher actually put up pretty solid numbers with the Detroit Red Wings. One of the few good players and the few bright spots in Detroit last year. I think this is the guy that goes to Seattle. A good, cheap defenseman in Troy Stecher that just couldn't get a crack in Vancouver. It just didn't work out. He goes to the Red Wings under a better system. It does work out. So you can see potential here in Troy Stecher. And I think he goes back to the West Coast playing with the Seattle Kraken. Now looking at the depth defenseman here, you've got Hayden Fleury, Husso Ricola, and Will Borgen. Again, these are just depth guys. They're young guys. Borgen's one of the younger guys in Buffalo. You could have taken Colin Miller. You could have taken a guy like Jake McCabe. But again, lower cap hit. And that's why I like a guy like William Borgen. And at 24 years old, he does have that potential attached to him. Now we're looking at the 3 goaltenders I picked. I picked Chris Drieger. They are going to get his signing rights from the Florida Panthers. Seems like a no-brainer. Everybody thinks Drieger is heading to Seattle, and it seems like that will be the case. Vitek Vanacek will be going there. You could argue that Justin Schultz could have been another guy from Washington to pluck, but I really like the way Vanacek played, helping out the Capitals last season. He went on some really nice runs as a rookie. I think Vanacek would be a really nice complement to this team. And then you pick up Kaapo Kähkönen from the Minnesota Wild. He played a lot with the Iowa Wild last year, but as the season went along, we saw more of Kähkönen in the NHL with the Minnesota Wild. So expect him to be another guy in that rotation. This is honestly, all 3 of these guys are going to be pretty solid. Now I wonder if Seattle takes a look at these guys and says, you know what? We'll keep Drieger and one of Vanacek or Kähkönen. Maybe they trade the other one out, or maybe they go with all 3 and they see who can fight it out for that starting position. But let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. What do you think of my expansion draft roster? Some of you may agree, some of you may not agree. Let me know what you think down below, and who would you pick for the Seattle Kraken team. Guys, it's coming out Tuesday. I can't believe it. I'm getting pretty excited for the expansion draft, but let me know what you guys think down below. Guys, thank you so much for watching this video, and I will see you guys next time.